want to talk to you actually about your new thing, Juno, Juno. I saw your announcement with our alumnus, Cian Bexty, that you're starting a new project, and I was signed up to both Countersignal, which is Cian's shop, and True North. So now I'm getting emails from Juno, and I bet a lot of our viewers subscribe to you or Cian also. So they're probably wondering what I'm wondering, which is, what is Juno? What's the difference between it and True North, and what do you hope to do? And I'm getting a lot of emails, which is great, but help me understand what your plans are.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so I'll just go back. I started True North in my living room all the way back in 2016. Ezra, I came on your show and announced it. And back then it was a think tank. And my whole idea was that I was going to write reports on immigration and try to encourage the government to clean up their immigration policies. It kind of merged and pivoted over the years and became a media company. And one of the things that I always heard from our supporters and from our fans was that they just wanted more journalism. You know, the opinion stuff was great. I was an opinion columnist in the Toronto Sun for many years, and they liked that. They liked the podcast, but they really liked the written news, the written reports. And I saw that even among all of the independent media outlets in Canada and the more conservative ones, we didn't have a great news source. So I wanted to turn True North into basically the equivalent of the Canadian Press, a wire service that produces straight news, that doesn't do podcasting or opinions, but just writes the news, informs Canadians, gives them the facts, but tells the stories that you're not going to see in the Canadian Press, that you're not going to read about in the Edmonton Journal or the National Post. And so that is still the idea for True North. And we're in the process right now of trying to apply for a very specific government program, not to get funding, but just to have the correct certification. It's called an RJO, a Registered Journalism Organization, and it would allow us to be a charity that does news. So True North is a charity, and part of what we do is news. But if we got this RJO status, we could devote the entire resources of True North towards journalism. We wouldn't have to worry about the CRA. And so we are in the process of that. And so while that is happening, the best thing for True North is for me to step aside and not be part of it, because I don't want my opinions, my controversial, sometimes outwardly conservative, social conservative views to muddy that process and to affect it in any way. So I decided that I was going to take my podcast and my opinion journalism and do it separately. And that is when I came across Cian Bexty, and we said, hey, why don't we join forces? Why don't we, he's in Alberta, I'm in Ontario. Why don't we merge together, use our resources, and create something bigger, especially coming up to the election. So we decided to join together to launch Juno News as a subscription-based news service so that it can be full of all the opinion that we want. We don't have to worry at all about the charity rules and anything about that we used to at True North. So basically, Juno is the publisher, Juno is the platform, and True North continues to exist as a news service. So basically, the idea is it's kind of like the Canadian Press, an independent alternative Canadian press, and then you can get that news through Juno. So if you subscribe to Juno, you'll get all the news from True North, you'll get my Candice Malcom Show podcast, and you'll get everything from Cian Bexty and the Countersignal all on one platform. You just have to subscribe once, and you get absolutely everything. So I get that it's a bit confusing. I think part of it is because of the Trudeau government, the way that they've changed the rules, and we have to jump through all these hoops and everything like that. But basically, the bottom line is junonews.com is where you can get all of the information that you've always trusted from True North, plus all of the sort of edgier, more fearless brand of journalism from Cian Bexty.
Got it. And I don't want to ask a dumb question, but I'm not sure if I got it. So will Countersignal still stay as its own website?
No, so it's going to be kind of folded into Juno. We're still working on that, but if you go to Juno News, you'll see there's a tab for the Countersignal, and in the next coming weeks, months, it will all be kind of merged together onto one tab.
Sure. I mean, I know I'm going to find out in real time because I'm getting emails from the both of you. Listen, I wish you luck. It sounds exciting. I love the name Juno. Of course, the beach in Normandy where the Canadians helped liberate and of course, it's also the name of our music awards, our National Music Awards. Okay, well, I think I understand that, and I wish you good luck. And the government does have so many rules and processes and bureaucracies to regulate journalism, not just the RJO, and we applied for the QCJO, and we were denied. imagine the government saying who is or isn't a journalist. That's sort of gross. But it's not just that. I mean, I don't know if you remember, but in 2019, I wrote a book called The Libranos. And the government said I had to register that with Elections Canada. There were 24 books in that election campaign about Trudeau. Mine was the only one that was investigated. And they fined me, I think it was $3,000, because I didn't register with the government. So I think there's too much regulation. The idea that a government can tell a book author or a journalist what they're doing is or isn't legal journalism feels very Soviet to me.
I agree. Well, I had Pierre Poilievre in a sit-down interview, and I asked him about this topic. I said, are you going to defund the CBC? Are you going to pull out the $600 million media bailout? He didn't answer the second question, which was interesting because I think in the past he had said that he was going to defund it. Now he said that he wants to depoliticize the process. And to me, it's obvious why, because I'm living through it. I'm going through it. There are these panels that determine whether or not you're a journalist. I mean, you've gone through it as well, trying to get that qualification to be the qualified Canadian journalism outlet. I mean, it is all sort of Orwellian. Anyway, Poilievre said that he was going to depoliticize it. And interestingly enough, the left interpreted that, Ezra, as somehow Pierre pledging that he was going to fund Juno and the Rebel, which is not what he said at all. But, you know, in the twisted minds of those journalists, any change to that system that could somehow benefit groups like ours is so offensive and wrong that they were basically lighting their hair on fire over it. It's not what he said at all. But the point still remains that it's a very convoluted, complicated system that we have to adhere by, right? It's the rules of how our organizations are structured. And it has been deeply politicized by the Trudeau government.
Here's that clip from your sit-down with Pierre Poilievre.
You've been outspoken. You said that you were going to defund the CBC. I believe that you said you're going to remove the $600 million newspaper fund that Trudeau created to fund the legacy newspapers as well. Does that concern you that the media is just not going to give you a fair shake?
Well, the traditional mainstream media has always been totally liberal. I mean, there's a few exceptions, but by and large, they will just regurgitate whatever the Carney Trudeau Liberals say, and in all of the last 6 or 7 elections, they have campaigned almost openly for the Liberals. So I would not expect it to be any different this time.
And so, just to clarify, would you get rid of that $600 million newspaper fund that Trudeau gave to newspapers?
We are going to be cutting back on that. You'll have to wait for our platform to get the details.
Okay, because
we have to depoliticize news media finance, because right now what happens is that there are subsidies that go to favored media outlets that CRA designates, and then there's not funding for others. So, and then of course the worst example is CBC, which gets this enormous subsidy to do largely what Canadians can get elsewhere. Canadians can get digital media, videographical media anywhere else, and yet they're paying $1 billion+ for CBC to do that. So I think those are examples of where we need to cut, and we need to defund the CBC and have an independent, self-supporting media that can keep Canadians informed.
You know what's funny is whenever there's some new government agency to regulate the media, like this decision if you get these statuses or not, and it's packed with liberal friends of Trudeau, some wise people I see it on Twitter, say, beware of and the media cheers, and people say, beware of this when the government changes, because if you have a media czar right now who is left-wing and shoveling money to all their left-wing friends, get ready for when a conservative government takes over and fills that position. And I always joke that I'm ready to serve if called. And I mean, I should tell you, Candice, I don't know if I would leave Rebel News for anything, because it's sort of my home and we built it up. But if I was called upon by my Prime Minister to serve my country by being the chair of the CBC, I would think long and hard about it. I just might do it. And I would regulate and lead that CBC in a way that maybe the Liberals would want it defunded and privatized. I'm just daydreaming in real time here. I guess what I'm saying is the thing about censorship and funding, which you mentioned the left-wing groups squawking about, what they're really giving away the game. They want funding and subsidies for politics, just only their politics.
Right. And I think that they are deeply concerned because, we have a principled position that we don't believe that journalists should take money from the government. I mean, that used to be universally held across the board. But what if we didn't hold that position, Ezra? What if we didn't? What if we said, okay, all's fair in love and war? If Pierre Poilievre wants to defund the CBC and fund Rebel and Juno instead, well, I'm here for it. Go ahead. I'll take the $1 billion. Why not? Right? The left is counting on us not doing that. But what if we just flipped the switch and said, no, okay, well, let's give us 10 years to shape the culture and give us all the money. I think that would truly terrify them. I would love to see you as CBC president.
Thank you very much.
I don't know if
We
you'd
should
burn the
start a
place down.
campaign.
I don't know if you'd burn the place down or if you would just fire everybody and bring in normal, real Canadians and have the opinions of the people watching right now shared for once, rather than the high production value, multi-million-dollar slur campaigns, basically trying to paint the truckers as terrorists or trying to paint any number of causes as nefarious, which is what the CBC sort of does professionally. And I think it would be really interesting if conservatives started playing by the same rules that the liberals play by and hold themselves to.